Stop for a moment and close your eyes and just notice the quality of the silence around you right now. In my years of studying Carl Jung's work, I've come to understand that what most people dismiss as mere absence of noise is actually one of the most profound psychological tools we possess. Today, I want to share with you Jung's revolutionary insights about silence and stillness, not as emptiness, but as the very ground from which true psychological transformation grows. What I've discovered through examining Jung's cases and writings is that he considered silence not as passive absence, but as active presence, a sacred space where the unconscious can finally speak to us without competition from the outer world. Think about your own life for a moment. When was the last time you allowed yourself to be truly still, without distraction, without stimulation, without the constant chatter that fills our modern lives? Jung observed in his clinical practice that we're all running from something in our constant busyness, and what we're running from is often the very wisdom our psyche is trying to deliver. I want you to feel the truth of this in your own experience, that subtle anxiety that arises when things get too quiet, that instinct to reach for your phone or turn on music when silence descends. Jung would say this resistance is precisely why silence is so essential, because it's in those quiet moments that the contents we've repressed begin to surface. In my research of Jung's approach to therapy, I was struck by how deliberately he used silence as a therapeutic tool. He understood that when we stop filling the space with words, when we cease our mental gymnastics and emotional performances, something miraculous happens. The unconscious begins to reveal itself. Jung discovered through working with hundreds of patients that the psyche has its own timing, its own rhythm, and our constant noise disrupts this natural flow. Put yourself in this situation I'm about to describe. Imagine sitting with Jung in his consultation room in Zurich. The session begins, and instead of immediately asking questions or offering interpretations, he would often simply sit in silence with his patients, creating a container where their authentic selves could emerge without pressure to perform or please. This wasn't passive waiting, it was active, attentive presence. What I've found most fascinating in Jung's theories is his concept of the transcendent function, which absolutely requires periods of stillness to operate. The transcendent function is that psychological process that mediates between opposites and helps us arrive at new, more integrated positions. But here's what Jung realized. This function cannot work when we're constantly identified with our conscious attitudes, when we're always doing, analyzing, controlling. It requires what he called the incubation period, where we step back from conscious effort and allow the unconscious to contribute its wisdom. Take a deep breath and consider this radical idea, that by doing nothing, by being still, we're actually engaging in the most sophisticated psychological work possible. Jung observed that in silence, the complexes that normally run our lives begin to relax their grip, and the self, that central organizing principle of the psyche, can begin to guide us toward wholeness. This is why Jung placed such importance on techniques like active imagination, which begins with creating a silent, receptive space where images from the unconscious can emerge spontaneously. In my study of Jung's cases, I've seen countless examples of patients who, after struggling for months with intellectual understanding, suddenly had breakthroughs during moments of quiet reflection, not because they figured something out, but because they stopped trying to figure it out and simply allowed deeper wisdom to surface. Jung was very clear that this isn't about spiritual bypassing or avoiding life's challenges. It's about creating the psychological conditions where genuine transformation can occur. What makes Jung's approach so practical for our modern lives is that he gave us specific methods for working with silence. He taught his patients to set aside regular time for what he called inner work, where they would consciously withdraw from outer stimulation and simply be present with whatever emerged from within. This could take the form of meditation, contemplative walking, or simply sitting quietly without agenda. The key, as Jung discovered, is consistency and intention, showing up regularly to this silent space with an attitude of curiosity rather than control. I want to emphasize something crucial that Jung understood. Silence isn't about emptying the mind or achieving some perfect state of blankness. Rather, it's about changing our relationship to the contents of our mind. In stillness, we learn to observe our thoughts and feelings without immediately identifying with them or trying to change them. This creates psychological space, what Jung called the transcendent position, where we're no longer completely enslaved by our complexes and can access deeper resources of wisdom and creativity. As we come to the end of our exploration, remember this essential insight Jung wanted us to carry forward, that silence is not absence, but presence, not emptiness, but fullness, not escape, but the most courageous facing of reality. The transformation that becomes possible when we regularly engage with silence is nothing short of miraculous. We begin to live from a deeper center, making choices aligned with our true nature rather than reacting from conditioned patterns. Tomorrow, we're going to explore a question that naturally follows from today's discussion. How can I distinguish between healthy solitude and isolation? This is absolutely crucial because Jung had very specific insights about when withdrawing into silence serves psychological growth and when it becomes pathological avoidance. Using Jung's framework of introversion and extroversion, we'll examine the subtle but vital differences between nourishing solitude that feeds the soul and isolating withdrawal that starves it. I think you'll find Jung's perspective on this distinction incredibly valuable for navigating your own relationship with alone time. If today's insights about silence resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. What happens for you when you intentionally create space for stillness? And if you haven't already, please subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's essential exploration of solitude versus isolation through Jung's brilliant psychological lens. I'm genuinely excited to continue this journey with you into how Jung's wisdom can help us live more authentic, integrated lives.